This began when I was about 7 years old, and my parents brought home a little dog. And as it turned out, I was very allergic to the dog and started sneezing, having allergies, so we got rid of the dog, and my dad took me up to the pet shop and bought me a turtle in a little turtle bowl, and I brought that back and I started getting books on how to take care of the turtle. And then in these books there was snakes and amphibians, and so we started looking throughout the neighborhood in South Florida and hunting snakes, and all my buddies at my age, we all were snake hunters, and we went around, and finally we got a guy that had a driver's license, and we were probably about 10 at that point, took us out to the Everglades, and we were snake hunting, catching rat snakes and water moccasins and everything we could get, lizards, and I just began to keep them in the backyard against my parents' wishes, and I had an unfortunate accident with a pygmy rattlesnake bite, and it wasn't a bad bite, but it was enough to get my attention, and I started to wonder about how could that animal do that to me, and I started looking up in literature and finding and hunting, and back then, this is like 64, 65, you didn't have the internet. You had to go to the library and you had to look for articles on venom and snake bite. And back then, you know, it was the old cut and suction method, which is archaic and doesn't work. Anyway, that led me into going down the road to find out about the venoms with snakes, not just the snakes themselves. So as time went on, you know, Bill Haast was in South Florida and became very interested in that, and he was sort of like a role model. And finally got to go down there. It was about an hour drive from Hialeah and visited his place, and then asked him if I could get a job, and he said, well, when you're old enough. So I said, okay, when I'm 16 and get my driver's license, I'll be back. And I went back and applied and started working on Saturdays because I was still in school. And that just led more interest into the venoms and the snakes and the husbandry, and it just developed from there. Then I met George Van Horn at the Serpentarium, and we worked there together, and he had just come back from Vietnam, and I was just fixing to go to Vietnam. I got drafted, and he, you know, gave me all the info I needed to know to survive over there. And then the plan was for me to go to Thailand and get some snakes over there and ship them back. And anyway, that worked out, and I did that. So in fact, sent back Bill a King Cobra that was just over 18 feet. It was a huge one. So then when I came back, George and I decided we were going to build a serpentarium down there, and that was in Florida, and the rules, the regulations, and the zoning, it was prohibitive. So we decided, well, we heard Disney was coming up here, let's go up to Central Florida and see what we can do, and we came up here, and that's when we built Reptile World Serpentarium together. And we worked that, you know, until about 94. Then I separated from that because I was also working a day job to feed the family because we weren't making any money doing venoms and snakes. He was drilling wells and doing other things too. And as time went on there in 2007 or 8, I think actually 9 is when he got the contract to do the coral snake project. So that's when I built this lab here. And we focused on the coral snake venom production since then. That's it in a nutshell, but it's been a very good ride, very interesting, and really have enjoyed it. The first snake that sparked my interest was a yellow rat snake. We caught it out off of 441, actually 41. It was a Tamiami trail. There was a road called Mud Dam. It was a canal with a dike, and it was full of yellow rats. And we would bring the big ones back, and I kept one and built a wire cage in the back. And then I got another one, and I got several. And there was a chicken hatchery in Hialeah. We would go every Saturday and get the baby chicks to feed the snakes, and that started it. And then the second one that sparked my interest was a pygmy rattlesnake, and I brought that home, and that turned out to be my first snake bite. Not a hospitalized bite, but enough where I swelled up and got me interested in the venom part of the snakes. There's more to the snake than just a hobby as keeping it as a pet. The venom really sparked my interest. Well, Marlin Perkins was one of the ones that I admired because it was easy to read about him in his book. Moody Lentz was another one. Some of the fellows that ran the zoos out in Texas, Tommy Logan, Joe Laszlo, Tim Jones, they were all people I looked up to, but we were very fortunate in South Florida. We had the king of all snake experts right there, that was Bill Haast. And Bill Haast was the one that I put at the top of the list. I wanted to grow up like him, I wanted to do what he did, I wanted to be like him, and that was who I tried to pattern myself after when I was young. I was a single child, and my family was afraid of snakes, my mother and father. However, they did allow me to keep snakes. They let me build a 4x8 plywood building in the backyard, which was against the law back then. And it started out with the yellow rats and the water moccasins and the pygmies and some rattlesnakes. And it eventually grew into cobras, king cobras, and a lot of exotics. And they allowed me to do it, but they didn't like it. And I had a couple of bites when I was younger, 2 cobra bites about 3 months apart. And I thought that was gonna put me out of the house, but they allowed me to stay until I was drafted. Well, my best childhood memories of snakes is when we would go with one of our buddies who had an old 51 Mercury, and we had to fill the radiator with pepper because it was full of water leaks, and he would get a couple bucks from all of us, which was a lot of money back then, to get gas, and we would go out to the 20-mile bend. And we would hunt the water snakes and hunt the rat snakes and water moccasins, just full of snakes. So we would come back with bags of snakes. And one day, one of the guys I was with decided that there was these 3 telephone poles with 3 transformers up at the top on a platform, and he could see some snake skins hanging out of the platform. So he decided that he would climb up this power pole contraption and get the rat snakes and throw them down us. And this was at the side of a canal, and he did that, and his arm brushed against a transformer and it threw him 20 feet in the air, and he landed in the canal and sunk. So we jumped in and pulled him out and called for help, and they got out there and burned him up pretty bad, but he lived. But we were very careful to make sure that we got the snakes in the bags and we left. That was a very strong memory. And it taught me that, you know, you better be careful, because as we would go in pump houses and other places to get snakes, you always look around your surroundings and make sure that find out what's going on, not just getting the snake. Okay, well, what we do here today is we have this private laboratory. It's at the back of my house, so I can come and go. It's very convenient, and it's run by my wife, Sally, and myself. We do all the work, we do all the cleaning, and primarily what we focus on with this building right now is we produce eastern coral snake venom for the production of the North American anti-venom by Pfizer Pharmaceutical. So to do that, we need a colony between 50 to 75 good-sized snakes, and that encompasses checking them every day for water, keeping the cages clean, changing the bedding regularly, disinfecting, feeding the snakes on schedule, weighing the snakes, monitoring their growth, make sure that there's no parasitic infections going on or anything like that. If any new snakes come in, we quarantine them, make sure that they're okay before we put them online. And that is the bulk of the work. On top of that, well, I've been very fortunate to be working with some researchers that are doing ontogenetic variation, which means does the venom change from the time the snake is born or out of the egg up until it reaches adulthood. So we've been able to help with that. And that's we also do geographical variation work, where we provide samples from all types of snakes to people to see, is this venom different geographically? Because when we were growing up, a rattlesnake was a rattlesnake. If it was in Florida, all the venom was the same. We know now today that's not true. There's very significant differences in the venom, that if those different variations are not included in the manufacturing of the anti-venom, some people that get bitten in the northern region are not going to react well. It's not going to neutralize some of those toxins. So we're seeing that there's a geographical variation in a lot of snakes. The Indian cobra, there's 5 different geographical variations that are under study there now. That's why you hear stories, well, that antivenom didn't work. Well, it didn't work because it was made in one part of India and it was used in another part. And I'm sure in Africa we're going to see there's some geographical variation stuff going on too. So that's an interesting part of this as well. My favorite part about doing this with the way I do it is I don't have to deal with the public in this private lab. It's just me and the animal. And you have to have, for lack of a better term, you got to have a passion for it. It's not really clean work. There's a lot of dirt involved. There's a lot of cleaning involved. But you actually get to know each one of these snakes as you pull it out and you're going to extract the venom and feed it and tube it. You look at the card and you get to know this snake as an individual, if you will. And they do develop little different traits amongst them. It's very rewarding to be able to do this and keep the snakes alive and keep them healthy and be able to breed them and then raise up their babies as well. Because if you're going to be in the venom production business, if you don't have the husbandry skills to keep the snakes alive, you're going to go out of business. So this ties in everything that you learn as you're younger on the keeping, the husbandry, and how to maintain the collection. It's a little different when you cross into the venom production world because you're exposing every snake to the same vial, to the same tube. So if you get a problem or you get a virus or you get a disease, it's very easy to spread it. And you have to stay, on watch for that. But at the end of the day, when you've done it, it's you against this venomous animal, and you just feel like the two of you have teamed up and you've made it work. You've not hurt the animal, and he has paid his rent per se by giving you the venom that you need to do your business and keep the lights on and pay the bill and feed them. We have about 65 coral snakes, eastern coral snakes, on the venom production line. That's what we specialize in. And then we have about 50 other assorted specimens behind me, various rattlesnakes from the Southwest. We have a couple of harmless snakes that we've worked with pattern, trying to develop some patterns with them, some yellow rat snakes and some gray rat snakes. We have a pine snake. We had some Afghan vipers here that we were working with. We're going to try to breed them, but they require to go through a cooling down period, so I farmed them out to another friend here that is setting it up in an area where he can bring them down to in the 50-degree range for a couple, 3 months before we can breed them. So we have a viable breeding process. That's one of the few vipers that lays eggs, and that's an important venom because people are interested in looking in that venom right now, and there's not a lot of them around. So that's what we have in here today. And all of the rattlesnakes and everything other than the coral snakes are fed rodents. Most of them take thawed out frozen rodents. We buy them by the hundreds, and all the coral snakes are fed Gerber baby food and another formula that we have developed, and that is fed via a catheter into the stomach every 21 days. I don't consider my job any more risky than any other profession, first line firefighter or a policeman, or a race car driver, or a mountain climber, or a dirt biker. The thing that I have in my back pocket that they don't is I have anti-venom available for me. I have medical devices here. I have everything set up with a bite protocol to save my life should I have an accident. And therefore that makes it, to me, relatively safe. You don't go into this and think you're gonna die. What you have to do is stay focused, because year after year after year, you can become complacent, and that's when you'll get in trouble. But actually, I think it's as safe or safer than driving a vehicle. I really do. The most dangerous aspect of my job and what I do is the actual picking up of the snake. If you're in a zoo environment or you're a private keeper, you should be able to keep a snake and hardly never touch it unless you have to medicate it or unless it gets in trouble, and needs a surgery or something. Because the minute that you pick that snake up and put your hands on the snake behind the head, that is the most dangerous part of the whole interaction of keeping them and raising them and everything and feeding them. And then the coral snakes are a little more, you have to be a little more careful when you're tubing them. You don't want to get your finger too close to the fangs. those fangs are short, they're in your favor. It's hard to do that, but you got to pay attention. And releasing the snake is also, you got to pay attention. That's one of the interactions you got to be careful of, that you get your hand out of the way. But the actual touching, picking up, and grabbing of the snake is the most dangerous part of the whole process. Yeah, it can become boring and monotonous, and you can become complacent very easy. And if you get in a hurry or you got something you got to do, you really got to gear yourself up to when you're going to come in here and spend 6 or 7 hours in a row. If you're going to come in for an hour or two and take a break, it's easier. That's the other part that adds a little bit of risk. Now, I don't know if you call it danger, but risk. The risk goes up when you're going to try to get them all done in one day, because you're in here for that long period of time, and you just you can't let your mind wander. You gotta stay in tune with it. Do I keep anti-venom on my premise? I do. I have anti-venom for every snake that is in this building. I don't have enough to do a really bad bite for some of them. I have what we refer to initial loading dose, which is what you would put in the first bag of IV, which is anywhere from 4 to 10 vials depending on the snake. And then if we need more, if it becomes a severe bite, that gives you time. We have 2 very good anti-venom banks in Florida. We're very lucky. A very good one, Venom 1 in Miami, is an anti-venom. They have all the exotics. We have another anti-venom bank here. Joe Kiefer runs it, Nature Coast, which is in Central Florida, and he's got a lot of exotics. In fact, I keep several of his exotic anti-venoms here for redistribution if somebody in the central part needs it, rather than wait for it to get from the West Coast. So yes, I keep anti-venom here for everything I handle. My preferred handling method with eastern coral snakes, and I'm going to stress this, that this is for this species alone. This is not for any of the species of coral snakes in Mexico, or not even the Texas coral snake either. I get them out very gently. I don't squeeze them. I lay them on the table, and then I just gently reach down and pick them up behind the head. It's rather a quick grab, but it's firm. Every now and again, you'll get a particular specimen that just goes off the charts. Well, you can either put them away and do them later, or I will run that one into a tube, a glass tube, and get him to voluntarily go in and then back him out gently and then grab him that way, and that works as well. That's about the only way you can handle a coral snake without hurting it. If you pin the head and he goes to spinning, you're going to damage the animal. That's the way I do the coral snakes. The rattlesnakes and the other vipers we work with is pretty typical to what everybody does. Pin them down and then grab them behind the head, and you either have to have somebody working with you to do a large one. I do most of that work myself, handling work, but when I got to do a real large one, my wife will come out. Some of the more aggressive and not really aggressive, that's a bad word. Some of the more agile and the ones that thrust around and go crazy when you restrain them, like a big eastern or particularly some of the South American rattlesnakes, I have found that if you run them in a tube, a clear tube, and then let the head come out of the under end of the tube, you can then pin it and grab it, and now what you've done is you've immobilized 70% of the snake's body so he can't thrash and spin and snap his neck. And you either have to do that or you have to have somebody else pin the body of the snake to keep it from thrashing and spinning. The problem with the tube thing is it takes longer and it takes time. So if you're gonna have to go through a volume of a lot of work, that would really slow you down. But for me, it's worth it. I have found when I first saw Jim Harrison do that years ago, I thought, wow, that's kind of strange. And the more I looked at it, I've adopted that. I think it's a very ingenious, great way to handle a large rattlesnake that's going to whip around and snap his neck. Works well for me. But you will find that all of us that do this have our own little special way that we feel comfortable with, and they're all right. It's got to be right for you, and it has to be right for the animal. I've had a few bites, probably around 12 significant bites in 55 years, but The people that want to brag are the ones that can say, I've been doing this for a long period of time, I haven't had any bites. Those are the heroes. Those guys, that's good. Unfortunately, if you're in the venom business and you have to interact with the snakes the way we do, it does happen. And I had most of my bites when I was young and learning, a teenager up to about the 20-year mark. Like I mentioned before, I had 2 cobra bites 3 months apart, trying to catch snakes like Bill Haast did, and I thought freehandling was the way to go. I even immunized myself for a period of time, which was pretty crude. But at that point, exotic antivenoms were hard to get. They're not that hard to get today. I don't recommend that today. It's not necessary. So those bites happened young and learning, inexperienced. In the last 15 years, I've only had 4 bites that didn't require hospitalization, and I don't really consider them bites. They were one-fang punctures that happened during a feeding process or a juvenile, one collapsed tube. So, yeah, those happen, but that's what happens when you do volume. And when I do mine, I come in and do them all in one day. I try to go through all 50, 60, 70 and get them done in one day because I have to mix the formula and it oxidizes if you don't use it. So that creates a little bit more of a risk pattern with being bitten. You just have to stay focused on that as opposed to doing it a couple hours at a time. Long-term disabilities that I've had was from a water moccasin bite in '67. It was both fangs and a finger, and I went to Hialeah Hospital and they hadn't treated a snake bite, and they gave me 20 cc's of anti-venom in the buttocks instead of IV. So it didn't neutralize well, and I lost quite a bit of the finger tissue damage. All the rest of the bites, I've had no damage that I'm aware of. I do have this hearing issue. You know, we've talked amongst us, and 4 or 5 of us that do venomous snakes or have a real bad hearing issue. We don't know if that's affected some of the neurotoxins that we've been envenomated with over the years. Probably not, because Jim Harrison's had some neurotoxic bites and he hears just fine. So that's probably not the case. So the answer is, I don't think I have any long-term issues other than the tissue damage that was part of a bite. Well, the snake that I respect the most, that is my most favorite snake, is the King Cobra. And it's not that I respect him the most because he's the most toxic snake in the world, because he's not. It's not that I respect him because he has the most amount of venom to deliver of all the venomous snakes in the world. I respect that animal because of his intelligence. If you've ever kept kings, there's no other snake that is like a king. The animal looks at you, you can look at it, it is calculating, it studies you, and I think it's one of the most intelligent species of snakes, in my estimation, that I've had and been exposed to. And they're really like a big baby. They don't want to bite you either. You know, they will bluff, but they're magnificent. And just to look at this animal that can reach almost 18 feet in length, and when it hoods up and it's 3 or 4 feet off the ground, it's just, I can't explain it. That snake has all my respect, and I really admire that animal. You know, I would never free handle the cobras like I used to. I mean, I see that on YouTube and it makes me sick. I really got a problem with that, because I did that when I was younger and inexperienced. And when I see people that are adults doing it today, the example they're setting for younger people that are going to mimic them and follow them, they got to think about those people, that what they're doing. I think I can speak about free handling from a very long perspective. I free handled as a teenager. I thought it was great. I thought it was, it blew my ego up. I was impressing people. And I thought that I could do it, nobody else couldn't. And it cost me 2 cobra bites. And then you grow up and you realize the mistakes that you make. Fortunately, my parents had good insurance, but you know, the bills were paid. They were very expensive. One was the ICU, but they were horrible. And I really don't like the free handling, and I strongly would put it out there to ask these folks that are doing that, please reconsider this and don't do it. You're setting a poor example for young people coming up that are following your footsteps. They're gonna get bitten, and anti-venom is not everywhere. And it's hard on the snake too. And it also creates a public perception that we are idiots, that we should not be allowed to handle and have these snakes for a hobby or for anything. It puts a bad light on the industry. It puts a bad light on anything that the public looks at. I mean, it became a strong factor here in Florida with the Fish and Game, the regulating authority. When a King Cobra got loose, they were going to stop everybody from keeping venomous snakes, period. And then they go on YouTube and the internet and they see all of this stuff. I can't support it. I really, really wish you folks out there that are doing this would go the educational route, go the academia route. Don't focus on this show-off stuff. It's just not necessary. And in the long run, you'll look back and regret it. I do. The snake conservation state in Florida, particularly in our county around us here, or in the Tri-County area, is terrible. The developers are required to relocate the gopher tortoises if they're on there. They do. Sometimes they don't, and they bulldoze over them. They don't do anything about the snakes. They take away their environment, they take away their habitat, they take away the habitat that their food items need to survive. And Florida has an entity, the Fish and Wildlife Commission, that is supposed to be, and conservation's in their name. And they're not hitting the target. I don't think they can stop the development. And it has a big impact. It has had a big impact. We don't see the amount of snakes being brought in from the public that, fortunately when you're running a venom lab or you have a tourist attraction and it has to do with reptiles, if somebody comes across a snake, rather than kill it, they'll put it in a garbage can and bring it to you. That volume has dropped considerably in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I couldn't give you the numbers, but I can tell you that just from what we experience and see, this building boom in Central Florida is devastating the snake populations here. We have 2 issues that are also hurting the populations of our snakes, is that the snake fungal disease, and that's being monitored. There's no cure for it right now. And this parasite, pentastamid, they're being found in the wild too. It's a horrible looking dinosaur creature. If you looked at it under a microscope, it's a lungworm basically. It lives in the lungs, and it is spread through the drinking water and through feces and eggs and that type of thing. So I don't know percentage-wise how bad those 2 illnesses are really affecting the population. What I do know is that more and more they're finding it, and there are studies going on right now as to try to figure out where they are, where the disease is located, what's the central point that it's happening. And we've got some of that going on here in Central Florida, we do. I don't know much outside of Florida with both of these. It's affecting the pygmy rattlesnakes, it's affecting the eastern diamondbacks with the pentastamids. There's a whole host of other parasites they get that are curable and treatable. And as the snake stays healthy and the immune system stays up and are in good shape, they can overcome most of them. But these 2 look to be a problem of the future, and I don't see anything in sight for treatment yet. I think we're just trying to still get our hands around just how bad it is and where is it. And every time I look at it, they're finding it more and more. It's spreading. What is the future for wild snakes in Florida? I think the future is grim. I don't see any slowdown in this population boom. They're just going to consume more land and more roads and, destroy the habitat. The future for the species in Florida would rest in the hands of breeders that actually are breeding these species in captivity. There's a big trade for the harmless snakes in Florida, these repticons, and they sell all kinds of snakes. And the breeders that breed these snakes are actually taking the stress off of the wild populations, because People don't go out and hunt snakes to sell them anymore. People look to breeders to buy them. And so that's a good part, but is the laws going to allow these breeders to continue breeding? That's another problem that you see these things on social media with free handling, and you see all the antics that go on with snakes, and if you build a public perception that it's bad, the public will lean on the regulators and they're going to stop it. And we often say that the coffin's built, and every time a snake gets loose or somebody gets envenomated by an exotic snake and it makes the paper, there's another nail in the coffin. So that's the state of the situation in my estimation right now. Do I think that snakes and people will be able to coexist? I'd like to think so. There's a lot of efforts by a lot of people sharing education. A friend of mine started this identification app called Snake Snap, and it's been very successful. It saves a lot of snakes. People call in and they get an answer right away. It's harmless, and a lot of people are willing to leave a harmless snake alone. Snakes control rodents like you can't believe. And there are a few people that will leave a venomous snake alone and let it go its own way. That's the hard one that I don't think we're ever going to be able to crack that nut, because people worry about their dogs or horses and their kids. And if they got a rattlesnake in their backyard and they're in a subdivision, it's hard for them to just go in a house and hope it goes away. There again, unless you pick the snake up or step on it, you're not going to get bitten. But people do go out at night with no shoes here, and kids are inquisitive, so that's an issue. I don't think that people and the venomous snakes are ever going to be able to coexist from a public perspective. I hope people and non-venomous snakes, through the education processes that are going on, make that possible. What I would like to see is these houses being built on acres, not on 40 by 40 foot lots, less condensed housing. I would like to see that people respect the venomous snakes as well as the harmless, because the people would be educated and understand that the venoms that these snakes produce are leading research materials for all types of diseases, all kinds of cancers. And if you look at the drugs that are made from venoms, while the drug is manufactured from the venom protein initially, if it's a simple peptide or a simple protein, it can be synthesized, and then Betta, a lot of the blood thinning drugs are made from venoms. A lot of the blood clotting drugs are made for venoms. There's pain medicines that are being looked at, but the most important thing now is the cancer research is going on with all types of venoms. We have just cracked the surface of venoms in medical research. It would be like we pulled one hair out of somebody's head, and we got a lot going on with that, but we got all those other hairs to get into. And we are going to destroy the venomous population of snakes in this world before we can get everything we need to learn from their venoms to save people. It's funny because I look at this pyramid and I see at the top of the pyramid is the general public. And at the bottom of the pyramid is the snakes, and then the people that breed the snakes, and then the people that do the venom work, and then the researchers that do the work, and then the drug companies that make it. And all of this pyramid is to feed and help the people, the general public at the top, and all the general public wants to do is cut out the snakes, don't keep them, they're useless, they're no good. We haven't done a good job educating the people, and that's what I would like to see happen. Less homes, more space, more habitat left alone, less roads, and more educated people that can learn to live and respect the animal. I mean, it's got just as much right to live as we do. That's what I'd like to see. Is that a utopia? Probably so.